I'm Logan Crawford, and right now on the Spotlight Network, we're diving into a powerful story of resilience and transformation. The name of the book, Kicking the Darkness. It's written by a terrific author. His name is Lamar, and he has written a deeply personal memoir that explores childhood struggles, faith, and mental health, offering hope and healing for anyone navigating life's darkest moments. If you've ever faced adversity and searched for meaning, this is a book, this is a conversation you won't want to miss. We're delighted to have this very talented author join us here today on Spotlight, and we ask viewers like you to support authors like him by subscribing to our channel and by purchasing this powerful book. The links are below the interview. And be sure to download the Spotlight Network TV app streaming on Roku, Apple TV, and Amazon Fire TV. Luke, thanks so much for joining us here today on Spotlight.
Thank you for having me.
It's my pleasure, my friend. Great to have you on the show. You've written a very inspiring book. Why did you decide to share your story?
Well, I've had a passion for creative writing over the last several years. I originally went to school for filmmaking, but it's only over the last few years that I kind of pivoted more to books, which I talk about in my book. When I was working at a factory job at an Epsom salt plant, and I started listening to more audiobooks as I work. So that's where it kind of pivoted. And I believe you're going to ask me some questions about my co-author, Nicole. Originally, we started wanting to talk about her story, and I was going to kind of be on the other side. It kind of got reversed in co-authoring. Once she connected with our publisher, she was looking to get in with an additional writer, and then she said, well, why don't you go ahead and go with them? I might actually have a story I think I can tell from my angle a little bit better. So it just kind of blossomed, and here we are today.
Wonderful. What was it like collaborating with Nicole? Did you basically, she wrote her story, you wrote your story, and then kind of melded them together after that?
Yeah, I mostly wrote most of my portions firsthand, and then she looked over the book and then added her own insight, and then I just asked her to contribute to the sections to where we collaborated the most over the last few years that we've worked together, from her time at the farm to her current time, to where she herself is looking to she's been offered a TV anchor job, kind of like yourself.
Yeah, that's great. Well, that's good for her. It's a great way to make a living. I say it beats working for a living. But I'm
Yes.
just kidding. You were obviously working too. Tell us a little bit about how your childhood experiences shaped your perspective on faith and resilience.
Well, I grew up in a relatively religious house, not super strict, about it, but I did grow up in church, predominantly in the Methodist church. And over time, as I got up to my middle school and high school years, I went to a private school that was more of a predominantly more Baptist church. So whenever I would go to church in youth group, I would hear a loving message about God, Jesus loves you, and forgiveness of your sins. And then as I went to the private school, I would kind of get a little bit of a different message. I would get more of a you got to live a certain way. You got to be a good person. You got to be a good boy, or there could be consequences after you die.
Gotcha. Absolutely, absolutely. There's kind of a dichotomy there between, faith and religion sometimes, and sometimes the religion is very, very strict, depending on which denomination, of course. What were some of your toughest struggles or moments in your journey?
Well, predominantly over the last journey, I give the earlier background from my childhood, but then particularly over my time, after I went to college and I went to LA, and just the struggles of living out in LA. I eventually came across a documentary that some of my roommates had showed me, to where it talked about a history of predominantly Black oppression that have been at the hands of multi what I guess that got me the most was is that it was rooted in more of kind of like within the Christian missionary group, and I said, whoa, that was a completely different perspective.
Yeah.
And I started hearing about books that were not originally in the Bible, and I said, well, where did those come from? Or just things that I hadn't necessarily heard before. So at the time, I was in LA, kind of living on my own. I kind of get a aha or a big whoop moment,
Mhm.
while at the same time it led to different manic episodes that I eventually ended up in the hospital for, because when I was younger, I was diagnosed as being ADHD and dyslexic. But over time, as I got eventually in the hospital, eventually I was diagnosed as being bipolar.
Mhm.
So I was experiencing high signs of anxiety that I had never experienced before. And at that time, I think I was 27. I said, well, how have I gone this long with how have I gotten this far in my life, and I'm just now experiencing things like this.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Well, it must have been good to get some answers. I mean, because you were suffering, you were feeling at not at ease, and to have a diagnosis is sometimes the starting point to finding healing, right?
It's just it is the starting point, but then your doctors and staff and your counselors try to educate you what they can, but then you yourself kind of research yourself, and then also kind of be more present to where you kind of become more aware of your own actions and history of patterns. Because I said, well, I mean, I was like questioning, could you scan my brain and you see, oh, there's the bipolar in there? Or they
Yeah.
say, no, it's basically more on your behavior and stuff, which I kind of struggled with in the beginning.
Yeah, yeah. It's a matter of looking at the characteristics as opposed to an anomaly in the brain. If you could look
Exactly.
at an X-ray or like, oh, let's do surgery on that, that'd be a nice thing, or put a cast on it. But
Mm-hmm.
it's a slower healing process. What was the pivot point to healing for you? When did you feel like I'm making a difference, I'm feeling better, and this is helping?
Well, unfortunately, it took, and I talk about this, I believe it was the summer of 2023. I talk about in my book, to where was kind of an additional breaking point. I had been prescribed medication before, and then I kept shoving it aside because, in our society, I guess it was might have shown as a sign of weakness a little bit.
Hmm.
What really helped over time, eventually over time really,
Yeah.
time was the biggest portion. Um, Getting the right medications, while at the same time focusing on and educating myself. So really, over the time as I started, this is what kind of led me down to my faith deconstruction. After not just that, also some other hardships that I had suffered.
Yeah.
Once I started kind of getting some answers, it said, well, you just kind of got to look. This is how I was raised, but this is how if you take a look around the world, it gives you a little bit of different perspective.
Yeah.
And then eventually, whenever I started, I met Nicole, and I started getting more into practicing present moment and deep breath work and meditation. I got on a high horse for that for a while. Unfortunately, I kind of have slumped a little bit recently on doing that, but that's whenever I started healing a little bit better over time, is getting the medication right, as well as practicing mindfulness.
Yeah. Two important things. One, to realize that there should not be a stigma to mental illness. Medicine is like cancer medicine or heart medicine. Medicine that you need to make you feel better emotionally is a necessity as well,
Mhm.
at times. And so I'm glad you got the medicine that you needed. I'm glad you found the path. Before we leave you today, what do you hope readers take away from your book?
Well, what I really hope people mostly take from it is that they themselves, I've noticed as I've gone through my shift, I'm seeing a shift around the world around me
Mhm.
of how people are starting to kind of question things, a little bit more, and they are, and that now that our society is becoming a little bit less stigma about getting help. I'm just really sharing my story with people and letting them know that they're not alone.
Exactly. Yeah. That feeling of commonality, that feeling of shared experience, I think is very, very important and very, very helpful. You're not alone. If you're out there, if you're suffering, if you have challenges, guess what? You're human. We all have problems. We all have challenges. We all suffer from time to time. Of course, some people have it worse than others because we don't want to diminish what other people are going through. But there is hope. There is help. And you'll find a lot of hope and a lot of help by reading this book. It is called Kicking the Darkness. It is a deeply personal memoir that explores childhood struggles, faith, and mental health. And of course, as I mentioned, it offers hope and healing for anyone who is navigating life's darkest moments. Luke, thanks so much for joining us here today on Spotlight.
Thank you for having me, Logan. Thank you so much.
I appreciate your time, sir. And to the folks at home, I'm Logan Crawford, thanking you for your time, this time until next time on Spotlight.